The topic of this presentation is fostering student peer social support and camaraderie. We've divided our presentation into two parts, represented by the two questions here. Why is student peer social support in the classroom important, and how can it be fostered? I'm Jane King. I'll cover the first question and the research, and my colleague Erin Lydon will cover the second question with classroom practices and techniques. It's important to note that both Erin and I teach online classes to non-traditional and beginning students at the University of Phoenix. Before I begin, we have some questions we would like you to consider during our presentation. The first one is, did you attend traditional university as an undergraduate, on campus and full-time? Were you at any point an on-ground student? Also, were you an online student? Second question, do you believe the friendships and connections you made as an on-ground student were essential to your success as a student? What about the connections you made if you were an online student at any time in your education? How would you compare the two experiences? And third, do you specifically encourage student peer social support in the classroom? Your response to this may be, well, what does this mean? So what is student peer social support or student camaraderie? Perhaps the best way to understand this is to remember when you attended university. If you attended on-ground university as both Erin and I did, you probably have fond memories of the friendships you formed, of that sense of belonging as you walked with other students to your next class, and then in your class saw the familiar faces of your classmates. There was a sense of being part of something important, and that we were all in it together. From our fellow classmates, whether we knew them or not, we had a sense of camaraderie. I believe I've probably given you some idea of what we mean by peer social support, but let me give you a more formal definition from a dissertation by Dr. Lisa Voigt, which I'll be talking about later. So social support. It's an individual's perception of beneficially supportive behaviors from others, and Dr. Voigt breaks it down in this way. There's emotional support, which is that empathy of caring for another. There's informational support, which is sharing information. There's instrumental support, which is providing tangible aid. Then there's appraisal support, which is basically giving affirmation. Erin and I have seen all of these types of support given by some of our online students to other students. For Erin and for me, though, we notice that although there are students who are engaged and friendly with their classmates, the majority of them tend to be less confident about making those connections. This means that throughout their education, very few students benefit from supporting one another. For Erin and me and for you, if we could create increased camaraderie between our students, would this make a difference to their sense of belonging and to their motivation to continue with their education? Research and our own experience prove that student peer social support does make a significant difference. Before I go further with the research findings, I want to review for you the students we teach at the University of Phoenix. These students may be similar, at least in part, to your students. First, we know our students are non-traditional. They are usually first-generation students. They work full-time. Sometimes our students work 1, 2, or even 3 jobs. They have family responsibilities, which usually include children. Our students attend university part-time. They don't participate in campus life. And finally, our students are 25 or older. For our non-traditional students, we know these two important facts. Older non-traditional students have lower persistence rates and significantly lower graduation rates. And they have low self-confidence about their intelligence and may believe they don't belong in university. Also, of course, for all students, and especially for non-traditional students, we know that the first year in an undergraduate's education is significant in relation to the likelihood of graduating. Dr. Jennifer Fletcher of the University of Phoenix has listed, quote, low satisfaction or sense of belonging with the higher education institution, unquote, as one of the reasons students might not continue beyond their first year. This is especially true for first-generation learners. As mentioned before, University of Phoenix students tend to be first-generation students who are unfamiliar with university. Being first-generation students, they may not have support for attending school from their family and friends, and sometimes it's worse than this. Their spouses or partners may be jealous of the time they spend on their studies. Also, family and friends may criticize them for trying to improve their lives. So we have to understand how our students feel, how important it is to encourage them to feel this sense of belonging by connecting not only with the teacher, but also with their classmates. Now I'd like to focus on the research in this specific area of student peer support, and as Dr. Voigt proved in her dissertation based on her research and the research of others, relationships between students can significantly affect student persistence. And by the way, the title of her dissertation makes a point in itself. Peer social support among online undergraduate students, a circle of comfort. This phrase, a circle of comfort, was taken from a student's response in the study. He shared that other students, especially those he knew through supportive interactions, were a circle of support. As for the students who were surveyed in the study, they were online undergraduate students at a large for-profit online university. These students were at or near graduation, and they had worked on an assignment together. The study explored how students used and valued peer social support. Also, the students shared their experiences with and opinions of peer social support in university. So, importantly, the study reflects the student's point of view. Now I'd like to share some significant points made by Dr. Voigt in her study. To begin with, it is well established that peer support significantly helps a student to adjust to university and contributes to the student's persistence. When we look back to our own education, this makes perfect sense. As mentioned before, as on-ground students, we can't escape that sense of belonging when we attend university with other students. As Dr. Voigt established in her dissertation, studies have proven that student peer social support in the classroom improves the quality of the learning experience, making it much more positive. Students describe student peers as, quote, lifelines or kindred spirits, unquote. Higher levels of peer support result in, quote, learning experiences of greater quality and more positive course experiences, unquote. Importantly, Dr. Voigt found that online students do not proactively search for support from their classmates. It usually results from a group activity. While engaged in that group activity, students bond together based on similarities such as personality, work style, field of work, family, the military, and religion. Online students are not aware of the value of creating relationships with their classmates. This is why it's so important for faculty to encourage or foster student peer social support in the classroom. By doing this, we can directly and positively impact the feeling of a low sense of belonging to the university and the feeling of loneliness our students may experience. This can only result in students being more likely to continue with their studies and to achieve their long-term academic and career goals. For Erin and for me, we have experimented with and developed several practices to encourage student peer social support in our classes, and Erin will now discuss these and other possible practices for increasing student camaraderie in the online classroom.
Thank you, Jane. Here is a list of how our students connect. So the first is university-sponsored online forums. And at University of Phoenix, we have Phoenix Connect. One of the best resources we have at our disposal for fostering peer support are university-sponsored online forums for chat and communication. At University of Phoenix, our social media platform dedicated to students is called Phoenix Connect. It's my understanding that many schools have similar platforms, if not basic online forums for communication. And as Jane shared on the previous slide, online students actually suggested a forum such as Phoenix Connect within the online portal for forming connections. Faculty have opportunities to encourage students to connect with their peers via these avenues and to encourage them to join online groups related to their interests, specific courses, and degree programs. As faculty, we can also share any specific online communities relevant to the courses we facilitate that might also be of interest to students. The next is chat feature. Most online learning platforms, including Blackboard and Canvas, have a dedicated chat feature. So faculty can encourage students to use the chat feature with their classmates. If they're struggling or looking to connect with others and the instructor is not immediately available, we can encourage them to rely on their peers for support and assistance as well. The next four are email, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So we can also encourage students to include an email address in their classroom profile or online forum profile to make it easier for classmates to contact them. Along with email addresses, students can also include a Twitter handle or links to their social media profiles such as Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. And students should only be encouraged to share what they're comfortable sharing, and they can always connect in these ways after more formal introduction and collaboration in the classroom as well. The next is course and private messages. So again, most online learning platforms have messaging features. Some have private messaging enabled, which would allow students to connect with peers, and most have a general course messages area. In my courses, I describe the course messages area as the hallway outside of the classroom, meaning that students can use that area to discuss anything they wish, whether relevant to the course content or not. I encourage students to post general questions there that might be helpful for other students as well. Inevitably, in each course I facilitate, there are a few students who will post a hello message or a message of encouragement to other students. And sometimes a struggling student will express confusion or frustration there, and others will chime in. When I see students doing this, I try to not only address any concerns, but also applaud their efforts by thanking them for supporting their classmates. And I will also use that as an opportunity to share how to use the chat feature in the classroom. My hope is that other quieter or shy students might then feel more comfortable using the course messages area in the future. Next is telephone and conference calling. Once students have connected either personally or through team assignments, telephone calls become another way that students can connect. During my online MBA, I routinely used free conference calling from sites such as freeconferencecall.com to meet with my learning team and discuss assignment preparation. And I used to suggest this as an option in my courses with team assignments, given the disclaimer that our university doesn't endorse or require the use of any of those sites, but it is a good resource to keep in your back pocket and share with students as needed. The academic counselors at University of Phoenix also suggest that students include a phone number in their online university profiles so that instructors can easily contact them. So if students are comfortable sharing that information, this then becomes another way in which students can reach out and connect with one another. Next is face-to-face. Face-to-face connections typically occur in our on-ground courses and when these students meet as learning teams. But however, on Jane's slide relating to student suggestions, students actually suggested pairing students up with one another based on geographic location. So when faculty have the opportunity to put students in the same region together for a team assignment, or if these connections form naturally through class discussion, it is possible that study groups and friendships can occur outside of the online classroom. Finally, join a friend. At University of Phoenix, students have the option to request to be in the same class with friends or peers through their academic counselor. While it can't be guaranteed, we are told that about 80% of those requests are honored. So as faculty, we can research our own institutional policies and make students aware of this option if it's available, and then suggest that they use that system to stay paired with classmates whom they may have formed meaningful connections with. Okay, faculty strategy for peer support. The first slide here is inform students about the value of camaraderie. As Voigt's research has shown, most students are not aware of the value of peer social support. So as faculty, simply getting them thinking about the value of creating those connections with classmates can be helpful. We know from the student profile that Jane shared that many of them lack confidence and support at home, so connecting with those lifelines or kindred spirits can mean the difference between giving up and dropping out versus persisting and thriving in their degree programs. In my entry point first year courses, I have created a recommended learning activity on this, but for courses where this topic doesn't naturally fit into the curriculum, faculty can encourage these connections through a few other ways, including class announcements and messages, participation in discussions and assignment feedback, telephone calls, and private messages. The next is modeling kindness. Kindness can go a long way in supporting our students and helping them build confidence despite some of the struggles many of them face. Simply modeling kindness in our communications helps students to learn and practice it and to build camaraderie, increase their chances of earning a degree, and for use in their careers and lives. So this is not a topic that needs to be explicitly discussed, but rather something all faculty can do to make the online classroom a comfortable and safe place for our students to open up and become more comfortable forming connections. And lastly, encouraging interaction and participation. So if participation and discussions is a graded deliverable in your courses, remind students in the participation feedback and through private discussions with them that responding to their classmates' posts will count towards the participation score. We can take this further by encouraging students to follow specific posts from classmates whom they enjoy interacting with. For those who make phone contact with their online students during our phone conversations, particularly with those who might be struggling, we may want to emphasize the importance of forming connections and building their support network. So as I mentioned on the previous slide, I have a learning activity that I share in my classroom, and this is it. We encourage all faculty to consider if a learning activity on this topic might be a good option in the courses they facilitate. One of the objectives in week 3 of the course Gen 127 that I facilitate is to identify strategies to sustain motivation throughout the college experience. So adding a learning activity here fit with the course objectives. Facilitators of other courses could opt to add one where it's most appropriate, or just encourage students through a general class message. I hope those examples from the courses that we're familiar with might give facilitators of other courses some good ideas where they might be able to place something like this in their classes. Part of sustaining motivation is having a support system, as the activity states. So the learning activity that I created includes tips on how to avoid feeling isolated and how to use the group chat option in the classroom, as well as how to add friends via our Phoenix Connect student social network. So while many of our students are familiar with Facebook, which easily translates into adding friends in Phoenix Connect, I recently had a student ask me for guidance on how to add friends, which awakened me to the need to further explain this feature and encourage students to use it. As the activity also states, online learning can feel isolating at times, even with strong family support. So forming connections with classmates helps to sustain motivation, keep students accountable, and make online learning more enjoyable. And then I also have a follow-up activity or tip that can be placed in the classroom. And this follow-up discusses using Phoenix Connect and demonstrates how to use the chat feature within the online classroom as well. It includes a tutorial video from our media library on how to use the communication tools in the classroom. And faculty of other institutions could likely find something similar as well. This could also be used as a tip in the course messages area for any course with some modification, and perhaps the removal of the follow-up questions if you want to avoid any confusion on it counting towards class participation. We encourage faculty to consider drafting something similar that's suited for your institution and online learning environment. Cyber Cafe. Cyber Cafe, this is a general suggestion for any class and is essentially an open discussion learning activity for any course. Jane uses this activity weekly in her courses in addition to other required activities and creates a Cyber Cafe activity or link for each week of the class. So it's a recommended learning activity for every week. Participation credit is earned for substantive messages relating to the course content, and students are encouraged to discuss course topics of interest and to share their personal insights and experiences. So they are directly encouraged to work together with one another to help each other and to provide support. They're encouraged to participate in the Cyber Cafe as though they're meeting together in an on-ground cafe and to share their personal academic and work experiences. And Jane notes that it's interesting that students many times share more in-depth experiences with each other in the Cyber Cafe than in other learning activities. So you might also want to consider putting something similar like that into your online classroom. Our next strategy is participation collaboration. And this strategy builds on the student suggestion of using a buddy system by pairing students together in an effort to meet participation. So in week 4 of a 7-week course, students are asked if they'd like to work with one another, work with another student on participation, and it is completely voluntary. The topics must relate to the weekly learning objectives and one of the required learning activities. Each student must post a substantive message relating to their topic, and these messages are included within the messages required for full participation for that week of the class. And the goal is for students to more independently develop topics and to create engaged conversations in the classroom while developing peer support with a classroom. So this is simply asking students to voluntarily work together and respond to one another's posts during 1 week of a course. Faculty might take note of students with similar degree programs, similar interests or life situations, or students who reside in the same city or state, and then pair them together. Okay, so this is our overall faculty strategy for encouraging peer support. We believe that every faculty member should have a strategy for encouraging student peer social support. The following mind map identifies the strategies that Jane and I are currently using in our courses. 1 being announcements and course messages. 2 is encouragement through participation feedback. 3 is the weekly cyber cafe. 4 is participation collaboration, or pairing 2 students together. 5 is modeling interaction in the discussions and encouraging it between students. 6, encouraging students to form connections during our phone conversations with them. 7, encouraging the use of university-sponsored online forums and communities such as our Phoenix Connect. And then 3 others to consider that we had mentioned previously are the chat feature in the classroom, encouraging students to be placed in the same class as friends or peers, and also the learning activity that I shared previously. So essentially, we're looking for ways to foster support that are not too time-consuming and are easy to incorporate into the curriculum and practices that we're already using. The key takeaways from our program that we hope everyone will keep in mind moving forward are the following. Research demonstrates a clear link between peer-student social support and retention. We often discuss faculty-student support, but little discussion is taking place on student-to-student support and how that might be able to help us further move the needle on retention. Our non-traditional students often lack confidence and support in their studies. So again, we ask everyone to reflect on their own undergraduate experience and consider how peer support may have played a role in sustaining your motivation. Many students are not aware of the benefits of peer support, and those who are consider those connections lifelines. So as faculty, we can plant that seed and get students thinking about peer support and provide students with opportunities to connect with one another. Finally, faculty can easily adapt practices for fostering peer social support. We recognize that everyone's very busy, so our focus in regard to faculty strategy was on creating approaches that were easy to incorporate into our syllabi and everyday practices as facilitators. Thank you for attending our presentation. I hope we've armed you with some helpful tips and resources for encouraging peer student social support in your online courses.